everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I thought we would do a little video on cream products. I'm going to do a full face of cream products for you. I'm going to do my hints, tips and tricks of how to use them properly, where you might be going wrong, what you might be struggling with a little bit, and just show you a full face of cream makeup basically, including the base. I'm also going to do a video soon on kind of spot concealing and stuff, that one that I teased ages ago. So sorry that's not out yet, but the principles are kind of similar. I think people struggle a little bit with cream makeup because they don't kind of prep themselves properly. Cream makeup, just like any kind of base makeup, can be a little bit tricky if you don't warm things up properly on the back of your hand. Some cream textures are a little bit better than others, but there are kind of ways to make things work for you, or to place things over the top of, say, your base makeup. I know a lot of people struggle if they've powdered their face and they want to use a cream blush. All of these kinds of things we're going to go through today. So give the video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to it, and let's get stuck in. So the first thing to mention is prepping your skin properly. I have cleansed, I have moisturized, I've got some SPF on, and it's looking at your skin and what it needs. I have fairly normal skin. I get a little bit dry on my cheeks. I do get some kind of dryness around my nose sometimes, and at the moment I guess you can see there's some leftover breakout and also a few kind of hormonal breakouts. This is something I've been struggling with. I think also it's a mixture of like stress and anxiety and stuff, because I'm sure we're all feeling a little bit of that at the moment anyway. I do have some darkness underneath my eyes. I mean, overall, I've got a smile on and stuff. I'm really not bothered. I think I look nice without makeup. It's not something that I feel embarrassed about. But you can see I, like everyone else, have got a little bit of kind of pigmentation around the nose area, some marks and some kind of breakouts, a little bit sort of darker around the mouth area, as is quite normal on most people. And then I do have some kind of blueness under my eyes as well. All of these are very minimal, but I'm going to show you how to cover some of these things and do this all properly using cream products. So some of the products are that kind of mid-range or a little bit more expensive. I'm going to give you some alternatives, but they might not be creams. So yeah, let's get to it. First things first, you know that I love the Revolution Conceal and Correct. This is a liquid product. I think it's a lot easier than using creams personally. It's a really nice texture, and this is the peach colour. So if you do have this blueness, when we talk about colour correcting on skin, it's really important that you don't just kind of look at one of those colour correcting wheels and think you have to use every single colour on the face. Certain colours do certain things, and what you want to be doing is using a very, very small amount of them so that you then don't have to work on concealing and covering up the actual colour corrector. So what I've got here is this is the Colour Click Peach, and it's from Cover FX. You can see it's a tiny, tiny little stick. It is, I want to say it's about the £20 mark or something, but this is going to last you ages because you should not be using loads and loads of it. So I like to place this on the inner corner of my eye where I get the darkest, and then I'm going to do a tiny little bit on the edges where you see I have some kind of like veining and stuff. You can take it over the lids as well, but I feel like if you're going to put shadow and things there, then don't worry so much. If you're using a kind of lighter colour on the lids, then maybe that's when you want to kind of work on that a little bit too. I tend to press, and you're just patting this in. The more you pat, the more pigment, and then you can kind of take your finger and blend it out into the rest of the skin. We're just going to do this on the inner side corner of the eye as well. So I'm just patting with my ring finger. The more you pat, the easier it will be. If you're using liquid product, then a good technique is to kind of do the same. But what you can do is you can kind of leave it so that it starts to dry out a little bit, so that when you then go in with your finger, you move kind of less of the product, if that makes sense. But as we're using creams today, I'm just pat, and then I'm going to drag the rest across. I'm just going to finish this up on both sides. Now you can see that that has cancelled out most of the blue, which is what we want. Obviously, if you're a deeper skin tone, you're going to be looking for less of a peach colour and something that is a little bit more on the orangey side. The next thing I'm going to do is going to go in with my foundation. As I said before, I have prepped my skin already, so I have put on a little bit more moisture than normal because I have had some little bit of kind of dry patches around the nose. I would say if you have oilier skin, it's actually a lot easier to deal with than if you have dry skin. I know those oily skinned folk out there. I used to be one. I used to have, my skin used to be much oilier. I'll probably look at me like, Are you joking? But dry skin produces a lot more texture, whereas oil control, you can do so much for skin prep, like mattifying moisturizers, only putting moisturizer where you need it, mattifying primers, more powdering, things like that. Whereas if you have a dry skin texture, the, you know, exfoliating and stuff is really important, but the reality is that product clings to texture and you can't hide texture. One of the foundations that is one of my absolute favorites is the Revolution, and it's just the stick foundation. I have the colour F8 here, and I like to kind of start in the centre of the face. This is my own personal one, so I am just going in from the stick. I like to concentrate my colour in the centre of the face because this is, apart from these kind of little bits and pieces that I can spot conceal after, this is where things are going to, you know, need more covering up. This is where we have most of our pigmentation. We have the kind of under eye area that's a little bit of a struggle. I get some redness between my eyebrows and stuff as well, and I can take this over the lids too, just to kind of even out my eyelid too. Now, as I say, I have popped foundation mainly in the center of my face, and the tools that you're going to use are really important. I really like fingers for a bit of a lighter finish. This means that the cream product is going to melt under the warmth of your hands and be really kind of easy to work into the skin. The trick with cream makeup is warming it up and really kind of buffing it in so that you get that nice even finish, and so that the kind of product doesn't sit holding lines and look really waxy on the skin. So I really like to use my Real Techniques buffing brush. I believe this is called the Expert Face Brush, and I'm going to start by just kind of spreading the product around the face and getting it nice and evenly dispersed. So as I say, I like to concentrate this in the centre of the face because that's where I need the most coverage, and then we'll work on kind of the outer edges, etc. I'm taking that over the eyelids. Notice that when I go kind of under the eye area, I'm patting this. So when you're using a buffing brush, the buffing motion is going to really kind of work this into the skin and give you that nice kind of clean skin-like finish. But where you need a little bit of extra coverage, or you don't want to disturb makeup underneath, pressing it is going to allow for that. So where I've got that kind of cream colour corrector underneath, I want to press this underneath the eye. The rest of the time I'm just going to spend a good couple of minutes buffing this into the skin. Make sure that you take it underneath the jawline as well. Now, as I say, keeping this kind of concentrated into the centre where I kind of initially placed the product, and then blending out. We're having less product as we get to the outside of the face, which is going to give you a little bit more of a skin-like finish. Now, if you want to, you can take a little bit on your brush, and as I said, you can go over those places where you need a little bit more coverage. So I am going to do some concealing, but I'm also just going to press this into the skin to give myself a little bit more coverage on those areas. I'm not using this as a concealer. I'm just layering up a little bit of product. For concealer, I'm just going in with a little bit of my Jouer Essential High Coverage Concealer pen. To be honest, this is not my favourite. What I'm going to do is I'm going to warm it up on the back of my hand. I've got a couple of colours that I'm just going to mix. One's a little bit brighter than the other one. Doing this on the back of my hand so that I can really warm the product up. What I then like to do is take a brush. This is the Real Techniques again. This is the Dulux Crease Brush. And I'm just taking what's on the back of my hand, and I'm going to place this where I need the coverage. So I'm really kind of pressing this onto that inner corner. It's really going to kind of lift and brighten. Just as we applied that initial colour when we were doing our correcting, these are also the areas we want to concentrate on. Once I've got that initial placement, I'm going to again take my ring finger and I'm just pressing it. I don't really want to move the product because we placed it where most of that darkness is, or if there's any kind of like leftover bits we want to conceal. And then when I think this is enough, I'm going to take that over the rest of the eye. Now, if you feel this is not enough, you can go back in again and add a teeny bit. I would do a couple of kind of thin layers, again, just using that same technique, and then to blend it out, just bring whatever's left over on the finger down a little bit. So we're not doing this massive kind of triangle here, but what we are doing is taking whatever's left over and blending it into the foundation. What you can do then is just take your foundation brush, or you can use a sponge, whatever you feel comfortable with, and then just kind of press these, and it's just going to kind of blend this more nicely. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just do some spot concealing. concealing, I have this RCMA palette here. I've got the colour set. It is the Shinto series. I'm going to use a mixture of like the first two shades. These are the two kind of lighter ones to get any of these tiny little blemishes that I haven't covered yet. What I would say though is just make sure that when you are using a concealer for blemishes, you don't want it to be, unless you have matched your under eye perfectly to your normal skin tone, you do not want to be using the same kind of brightening shade as underneath the eye. What you're going to do then is kind of reflect light off it and make it stand out more. What we want to be doing when we're covering any blemishes of any kind is using a tiny amount of product that blends perfectly with the all over foundation colour that you've done. This is how you disguise spots properly. So I'm going to just take a mixture of this. I'm using a fluffy brush. You can use a smaller brush or your finger for a more precise application. So I'm going to press this into the skin and then blend the outside. Really like these. I actually use these as foundation on a almost day-to-day basis now. They are about 50% pigment, and so they make excellent concealers. I always have the larger palettes for if I'm doing other people's makeup. Then I'm just going to move on and do my brows off camera quickly because you guys have seen that a million times. I will do a separate brow video that's like an updated one at some point, but I'm just going to do this off camera for this one. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a little bit of powder. This is the Soap and Glory One Heck of a Blot. Obviously powder is not cream product, but what I'm going to do is I'm still to bronze and do all that kind of stuff, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pat out any creasing that might be happening underneath the eye. I'm going to look up a little bit and I'm just going to powder where we've got most of our concealer. I'm using an e.l.f. brush. I think you should use something that's quite small. I call this kind of precision powdering. Now I'm not going to do this on the cheeks yet, even though I do have kind of spot concealing there. I'm going to do this just right in the centre of the face, so that when we then go to put our cream bronzer, you aren't going to get product kind of lifting and sticking together. Now, I'm going to be going in with my Milk matte bronzer. It's matte, but it's cream. It just kind of blends really nicely into the skin. This is the colour Baked. It's a really, really nice finish. What I like to do is, much like with everything else, I like to warm it up on the back of my hand first so that I have a really nice, can you see how it's giving off that shine? And that just means, I mean, you can even tell from here. I think this is a much better way of doing it than trying to go directly onto the skin where you may move kind of work that you've done before, etc, etc. If you have another buffing brush, that's a really nice product to use. I actually really like using a dual fibre brush for cream products that are of a darker nature, things like bronzer, contour, things like that. I always like to kind of tap it in and then I like to tap it off a little bit. I think the scary thing about cream is that you won't be able to blend it out, and I think going in with a little at a time on a brush that's not going to pick up a ton of product is always a really kind of nice way of doing it. Notice that I'm also kind of tapping it. So you can do a mixture of really light pressure, just kind of wisping it into the skin. Because it's creams on creams, it should kind of blend out really nicely. And then if you want a little bit more pigmentation, you can pick up a little bit more and you can kind of pat it where you want a little bit more colour. Also, one tip if you are trying to get like a little bit less of kind of pressure and you're struggling with that, holding the brush up like this is going to apply more pressure. Try and hold your brushes a little bit to the end so that you kind of get a flick of the wrist, you know, and that's really going to kind of help you buff that into the skin. Just taking this over the nose as well. I'm not necessarily contouring with this, I'm just kind of warming up the skin. If you want to do a contour, you need to be making sure that the colour that you're using is a contour colour. This is very warm, it's a bronzer. If you're going to be contouring, you want something that looks like a shadow. And don't just kind of copy the shape of things that you see on here. It's really important to take into account your face shape. I like to take my bronzer kind of into this area. I've got quite high cheekbones anyway, although you used to be able to see them a little bit more than you can now. But if I suck in, I kind of do follow my bronzing line. I kind of stop here, but I blend it kind of upwards because I would naturally catch the sun there. I like to bring my bronzer kind of in here as well, and I do kind of sometimes take it underneath the brow as well. Again, high points of the face. Now, if you're still not sure about how this is blended, again, you can take your foundation brush or you can take a sponge and just kind of go over those areas that you want to keep kind of lighter. Just kind of blend this all in. Trying to blend out lines and things, again, you can go over with your sponge if you feel more comfortable using your sponge. Don't worry that you have a little bit of powder in the center of the face, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is just show you how I like to do a really simple eye look using cream products. So let's zoom you in. Right, now as you can see, I've got one eye done. This is a really easy, simple, nice look that I do on myself all the time. It's a little bit messy, it's not too precise. You only need two colors. I like to use either two cream shadows, one that's kind of like a medium or like goldy tone, something. You could use a bronze or anything. You could even use like two shades of the same color if you had like a light blue and a dark blue, something like that. Or instead of the darker color being cream shadow as well, you can also use a liner. I have one of these kind of Kiko sticks in a dark brown. This does have a little bit of shimmer in it as well. And I'm also going to be using the Asda Shadow Cream in the colour Vintage. This is really similar to the Charlotte Tilbury pots. It's just got a little bit more kind of texture, chunky glitter in it, but I quite like that. When you're doing this kind of a look, I don't think it's really necessary to be super precise. What I would say about most cream shadows is that they are really good as a base for other shadows in themselves, in that once they're kind of dry, they tend not to crease or anything. So I actually wouldn't bother using a base with them. I just like to make sure I have no creasing. And what I first like to do is take a really light layer of this on a brush. Again, we're using all real techniques today just because it's nice, easy. I also find that because they have a range of shapes and sizes, they're really nice, and they work really well with cream products because they are synthetic and they wash up really nicely. So I am just first getting a little bit of this on my brush. I'm going to concentrate the colour on the lid, but I'm then going to take it through the crease as well and blend this out. Now I'd first like to apply a light layer. I first like to apply a light layer so that when I go back in and I want my lid to really kind of pick up that sparkle and stuff, we already have a nice kind of gradient of colour. You can also use a new colour. You could use powder eyeshadows instead, but obviously today we're talking about creams. You could just use a single colour and add some mascara. You could just pop this all the way around the lid as well and it would look really, really nice. So same brush, I'm just going to go in and pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to take that underneath the eye as well. We're going to go all the way in because it's not a super dark colour. Just going to look up slightly. I'm going to make sure I join this up at the corner, and I'm just going to buff this into the lower lash line. What I'm then going to do is take a little bit more of this colour, and I'm going to make sure I place a little bit more onto the actual eye. Can you see how we've got that nice kind of fade out, but now this is really picking up that kind of gold and the shine of the product? And I just like to kind of press this onto the lid space and then a little bit into the corner. So we've already got like a nice gradient. The trick is kind of layering, I think, with cream products, especially ones that set like this. Get familiar with your product a little bit, you know, test it on the back of the hand, see how long you have to kind of blend things out. Know your products before you start kind of using them. What I'm then going to do is buff this into the lash line, and it's going to look a little bit messy, it's going to look a little bit undone, but I kind of think like a little bit of smoke here, a little bit undone is really sexy. Honestly, this is the easiest thing you will ever do. So I'm going to take a smaller brush. This is the Real Techniques shadow brush, and I'm just kind of smudging this into the lash line. You don't have to be neat about it. I'm going to kind of take this up as well into that corner a little bit, and it gives us a nice smoke. You can also do this, you can go straight onto the brush with your product if you feel uncomfortable applying it straight to the lashes. And the same technique, pushing this into the lash line. I like to bring it kind of 2/3 of the way, and then I also like to take it underneath, but I only kind of put it on this kind of outer third area, and apply some mascara. I've gone for a bit more of a kind of layered spidery lash today. You do whatever your preference is. The mascara I'm using is the Colourpop Volumizing Mascara in the colour Brownie Points. This is actually a dark brown, but because we're kind of bronzy and goldy, I think it looks really nice. A little bit of a tip here, if your brush is really big and you're worried about getting this underneath, just make sure the end doesn't have too much product on, and just kind of tickle the bottom lashes, and it gives you a really nice effect. So you'll coat them still without potentially getting all clumpy and messy. So that is a really, really simple, easy eye look using just two colours. It's about layering, but it's a really easy everyday look. If I need something quick and easy, then this is what I will do. So this is just a really easy, simple way of using your cream eyeshadow. Now, moving on to highlight, I've got one of these. These stick ones from Colourpop are really nice. nice. I'm going to use their blushes in a second. They are one I would highly recommend. I'm actually using the Honey Bronze Highlighting Dome by Body Shop, and it's a really nice kind of cream to powder. I've just wiped off a little bit of my duo fibre brush and I'm just swirling this on and really kind of coating. The duo fibre is a really good way, as I said earlier, to not get too much product on the skin. And I'm going to take this product and I'm just going to buff it over the skin. It gives a really nice sheen to the skin. Can you see? It's a sheen rather than like full-on glitter or anything. And I find using a duo fibre brush, just as I said earlier, kind of makes sure that you don't deposit too much colour. I personally really like to do my highlighter lately before I do my blush, because I feel like if you're not brilliant at blending it in, you have the blush to kind of stop you getting these strips of light down the face, if that makes sense. So again, same brush, I'm just going to kind of buff it off on a towel, and again I'm going to go in with this colour from Colourpop. It's their stick blush in the colour Roosevelt. Just like with the bronzer, I've just taken some and I've warmed it up on the back of my hand. So I've kind of picked up some and I'm just tapping it out. Little bit of a swirl, I kind of placed it on there where I wanted it, and then little bit of a swirly whirly, holding the brush at the end and picking up more product for the other side, tapping it off. And then you can take like your damp sponge and just go over top to make sure everything is blended nicely. For lips, it's really simple, do whatever you want. I'm going to use the Wet n Wild Gel Lip Liner. The colour that I used there is Bear to Comment. These are really nice, cruelty-free. In fact, everything I'm using today is completely cruelty-free. Then I'm going to go in with a little bit of lip gloss, and I like I've got the Barry M That Swell XXL Extreme Lip Plumper in the colour Bougie. It's a really beautiful colour. Just beware, if you don't like tingly, it's a tingly. It's a little bit tingly. You can just use this in the centre. Whoa, I forgot how much these smell. Oh my god, it smells like Starburst or Opal Fruits, if you're of that generation. This is such a nice colour. At this point, you can just go back in if you see anything that's kind of got uncovered. Just be aware if you've applied blush and stuff, you might want to go like a teeny bit darker if you're reconcealing. I just like to go over any spots that I might notice. I mean, there's a couple of things that you can now see through, because obviously if things are textured and you're going over the top with powders or whatever, you're going to catch on the risen bits, if that makes sense. So you can go back over with a little bit of concealer if you want to. I'm in the house today, I've got nowhere to go. Oh, this is tingling now. Not in an unpleasant way, just a little bit. Now, what I would say is you can set the centre of the face again, or you can kind of set, I would leave the edges of the face to give you that nice sheen. If you get particularly oily, mattifying primers, buffing things into the skin, using not a hideous amount of product is really going to help you. And make sure that you are powdering the centre of the face. What I like to do after I've powdered, I'm not actually going to add any more powder today because I don't think I need it. If I were to add a little bit more powder, if I was a little bit oily, I would then take my damp sponge and I would press that powder into the skin, because that is just going to help stop you getting so shiny. And what it's also going to do is where you've put a little bit more powder and perhaps you can see it on the skin, it's going to press it into the skin to give you that kind of more cream, nice glow finish. Now, this isn't really greasy looking. It doesn't look like I've got a full face of cream product. It just looks like skin, which is kind of what we want. So this is your finished look. I hope you've picked up lots of hints and tips on how to use cream products. Anything you might be struggling with, please do ask me some questions down below. I hope that it's been in-depth enough for you. If you want me to do some more tutorials on cream products, or you have any particular specific questions or anything, then please do leave them in a comment down below. Don't forget to follow me on my social media and things. I'm in my DMs a lot lately and might be doing some lives, doing a lot of like Q&As and things over there. Also doing a lot of like watercolour, like face charts and things. So if you want to see like more creative things, or get some ideas of how to fill your time when we're all kind of on lockdown, then please do follow me over there. Definitely let me know what you guys have been doing. I hope that you are having a nice day wherever you are and staying safe. Sending you all lots and lots of love, and I will see you very soon. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.